Welcome to Deck Analysis and Testing. Today we're actually looking at Mayakashi's. Mayakashi is a zombie synchro deck and also link climbing deck now that has been around for years, but it has always been kind of mid because obviously link monsters weren't a thing back when this deck was initially released. Until now, not only do they finally have two of their link monsters, they also have their one card starter in Hajun. The new Mayakashi Legacy skill also solves the problem of not having enough extra deck space for your Mayakashis, and also saves time by not forcing you to synchro summon 5 times in every game. Let's have a look at the cards. First is our one card starter, Hajun. This card, when normal special summon, can special summon a Mayakashi from your deck, and also it locks you into Mayakashis as long as this card is on your field. Usually you will be summoning your tuner in the TCG, but because of how the skill allows you to actually make your synchro monsters without actually synchro summoning, you can actually summon the Yuki Musume instead. But let's have a look at Daki, the graceful Mayakashi, where this deck is based around. This card can special summon itself from the graveyard every time you summon a Mayakashi extra deck monster, including synchros and links. So this basically allows you to have infinite material to make any of your extra deck monsters, as long as this card is in your graveyard, because this effect is not once per turn at all. So the gimmick of this deck is to just climb from level 3 synchro to level 5 to level 7 to level 9 to level 11, because this tuner just keeps summoning itself back, and then eventually make your link 2 and your link 3 and then your link 4, which is not in the game yet, so you're just gonna make a link 2, and then make a link 3, and then make a link 2. So you just keep making all of your extra deck monsters in a single turn and just load up your graveyard with every extra deck monster that you can possibly make. For level 1 monster, it is Yuki Musume. This card can special summon itself from your hand or graveyard if you have another Mayakashi card on field, and then you can send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard. So this is another way that you can get your Daki to your graveyard without actually having it on your field. Next is Yasha. This card is a pretty good extender and also a way to keep playing if your opponent disrupts you. You can discard one other Mayakashi monster to special summon this card from your hand, and you can only use this effect once per turn, and also it locks you into your Mayakashi extra deck monsters, which really doesn't matter because we're playing only Mayakashi extra deck monsters anyway. And for the spells and traps, we're playing one copy of a 1/1. This is just a searcher for a one card starter. We're playing one copy of Winter. This card has an effect on field, which doesn't really matter. It has an effect that sends this card and a Mayakashi monster to your graveyard to draw a card, which is a way to get rid of your extra Daki that you have lying on your field before you end your turn, because it's just a free guy, so you can just send that to the graveyard for a free draw before you end your turn. But most importantly is its third effect, to banish itself from the graveyard plus a zombie monster to special summon a Mayakashi monster from your graveyard. So this is a way that you can actually summon back your synchro monsters from your graveyard and trigger their own summon effects. Next is 3 copies of Spiritualism, because it's a good free-to-play back removal, and 1 copy of Mayakashi Return. This is one of the best kind of searchers in Yu-Gi-Oh! In general. It either adds the card that you need to your hand or sends it to the graveyard depending on whatever you need. So you can either add your 1 card starter, you can add something like Yasha in case you get disrupted, you can add something like Mayakashi Mayhem if you need a trap, or you can even send your Winter to the graveyard if you need a reborn. It's just probably the best kind of searcher the game has. Next are the traps. We're playing 3 copies of Horror House and 3 copies of Mayhem. Usually you only play 1 copy because you have 3 copies of the Searcher, but because we only have 1 Searcher, we're playing 3 copies of the Trap. The Trap has a multiple of effects, and it triggers every time you special summon a zombie synchro monster from a graveyard. It has 4 effects for you to choose from, and you can only use 1 of them per turn. And 1 effect is draw a card, the other is to set a Mayakashi spell trap directly from your deck, 1 inflicts 400 damage, and third one sends 1 monster with the lowest attack your opponent controls to the graveyard, which is probably the best one. You will probably use that effect the most. For the extra deck, we're playing a copy of Yoko, which has an effect that when it is special summoned from the graveyard, it pops a monster without targeting. We're playing one of the level 11, Gashadokuro. This card is unaffected by anything when it is special summoned from the graveyard, which is really nice because it has a ton of attacks, so it usually allows you to at least not to die if you special summon this card during your opponent's turn. We have the Spell and Trap Destroyer, which is level 7 Tengu, and the level 5 Synchro, which pretty much does nothing. You don't really use it for the effect, you just use it for the level. You usually don't play the level 11 and the level 7 one, as you can see in the expensive version later, but because we don't actually have access to multiple copies of the Link monster in this free-to-play version, we will be using these Synchro monsters instead. And speaking of the Link monsters, let's have a look at the Link 2 first. Yukiona, the Ice Mayakashi, is a Link 2. Honestly, its effects doesn't really matter, it's just useful as a Link 2 for you to climb on. But let's have a look at its effects anyway. While this card points to a Synchro monster, your opponent monsters cannot target this card for attacks. And if a Synchro monster in your possession is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect while this card is on your field, you can target a face-up monster on field and halve its current attack and defense until the end of the turn. It's nice, I guess, but what's even nicer is the Link 3 monster, Yukiona the Icicle Mayakashi, has two really good effects. It allows you to, when special summoned, target an effective monster your opponent controls and negate its effects permanently. So even if you don't destroy that monster in your own turn, that monster still won't be able to activate its effects as long as that monster is on the field, which is pretty nice. And also, as a quick effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard to special summon one zombie synchro monsters that is banished or in your graveyard. This effect is amazing. It is a quick effect and it allows you to summon your synchros during your opponent's turn as a form of disruption. And also it's really good because your opponent actually pretty much doesn't have a way to stop it other than using something like a DD Crow on your Link 3. Even if they use a DD Crow on your synchro, you can still summon it because it also summons from your banished zone. So it's a really good form of card removal that actually can't be prevented by your opponent in most cases, which is really nice for this deck. Let's have a look at the skill. The skill is just Stirring Mayakashi. It is a legacy skill designed specifically for this strategy. If you have at least 12 Mayakashi cards in your deck at the start of a duel, you add 3 types of Mayakashi monsters to your extra deck. The 3 types that it adds is actually the level 3 Synchro, the level 7 Synchro, and the level 11 Synchro. So you can only special summon Mayakashi and zombie type fire monsters during this duel, and also you can use this effect once per duel. If you have Mayakashi Synchro or Link monster, you can pick up to 5 Mayakashi Synchro monsters of a different level and send them all to the graveyard. And also, if you send any monsters with this effect, you can special summon them from the graveyard. So it bypasses the summon restrictions of extra deck monsters being in the graveyard, which is quite nice. And also it saves a lot of time by not having you to synchro summon every single level synchro monster, just climbing all the way from level 3 to level 11, which wastes a lot of time. So it's quite nice. And let's have a look at the expensive version. As you can see, we're actually not playing a lot of back row. Usually people don't play a lot of back row in Mayakashi because the strategy itself doesn't really need back row anyway. So if you just don't play any back row at all, it's nice that it blanks your opponent's back row removal. So for example, if your opponent has an MST, they just can't use it at all because you don't have any back row. So instead of back row, we're playing Effect Veiler, which activates from your hand, and just one trap in the entire deck. And the trap that I chose is Metamorphosis, which you can activate in response to back row removal. People usually use Mayhem, but I like to use Metamorphosis for that reason, because you can chain it when your opponent tries to destroy it with an MST. And of course, we're playing 3 copies of the 1-card starter, we're playing 3 copies of the searcher, which makes this deck a lot more consistent. For the extra deck, playing 3 copies of both links is pretty much mandatory. You could argue playing only 2 copies of the link 3, but the link 2 is a free of. You must play 3 copies of this card. It's really hard to play without 3 copies because you will be using 2 to 3 copies of this card just in your first turn. And if you don't have any more link 2s in your extra deck, you don't really have a good follow-up in your next turn. So it's always nice to have as many link 2s as you have in your extra deck, because we don't actually have the link 4 in the game right now. Okay, let's have a look at the replays. We are going second. This deck honestly does okay both going first and second. Obviously it's better going first because you can do your plays uninterrupted, but going second, this deck still has a myriad of ways to actually play through disruption. Most notably is a Yasha. This card can special summon itself without actually using your normal summon, so even if it gets disrupted, you can just use your normal summon on something else, like your 1-card starter. Our opponent is playing a Rocket, and they're going to make the Ball Load Furious Dragon, which is annoying because it is a disruption that we can't actually prevent with our Spiritualism. But at least we can just bounce back the 1 set card that they have, so we don't have to worry about that. And we're going to summon our Yasha, which gets popped by our Furious Dragon, which is fine because, as I said, this deck has the capability to play through some amount of disruption, especially when you have Yasha in hand. So we can just normal summon the level 2 tuner that we drew, and then just start comboing. We're going to use the skill to send 11, 9, 7, 5, and 3 to the graveyard, so we can summon them back later. We're going to make our link 3, use the link 3 to negate the monster effect, which doesn't really do a whole lot because it already used its effect, but we could do it, so we're going to do it anyway. We summon back the level 2 tuner, make the link 2, summon back the level 2 tuner, and then use the link 3's graveyard effect to summon back the Yoko, and then we're going to synchro summon again, but our opponent will be scooping before we could go for lethal. Okay, in our second game we were actually going first, so we could pretty much do our combo uninterrupted, which is always nice. And our opponent will be playing Duel with 5 cards in their extra deck. I don't know what these people are playing. We have the 1-card starters, so we can start with that. We're going to make the link 2 immediately without making any of the synchros, because we actually are able to use the skill to mill all of the synchro monsters to the graveyard. And as you can see, I actually don't summon the Yuki Musume because I actually don't know about the combo yet when I was playing this game. I should have just summoned a Yuki Musume from the deck instead of making the level 2 tuner, which you will see me do in the next game, which is the expensive version, where I actually know what I'm doing. Our opponent will activate the Dark Hole, which is fine because it triggers the effect of the level 11 synchro, which summons itself back. Our opponent will activate Necro Valley, which is annoying, but at least we can chain Yuki Owner to summon back the level 7 synchro to pop the field spell. Our opponent will use Pawn of Duality to add a Crackdown, which is annoying. And then he's going to set 2, including 1 copy of Piercing the Darkness, which is very annoying. We will have to find a way to actually get rid of his Neos without actually going to battle. But thankfully, we do have an out in Horror House, because we can flip that monster face down to actually prevent it from gaining any attack. We're going to do that, we're going to attack, he's going to gain attack, we will flip that face down, so we actually can beat over it. Our opponent will activate their Super Poly, pitching their Crackdown that we bounce back with the Spiritualism to make the fusion. And thankfully, it has the exact same attack as our level 7 monster, so we can both destroy it and destroy our own monster, which allows us to summon level 5 synchro from our graveyard and go in for exactly lethal. Okay, for the third and final game, we are playing the expensive version and we are going first. And as I said, we actually, in this game, I know the combos, so I know to actually summon the Yuki Musume with the level 1, as you can see right now. This is what you should be doing when you actually play this deck. And we're going to make the link 2, mill 3 of the synchros instead of milling all 5, so we actually have a bit of synchro monsters left in our extra deck in case we need them. And we're going to summon back a level 1 to actually mill the level 2 tuner that way. This is how you're supposed to play this deck in Duel Links. We're going to make the Link 2 again, and summon the level 2, make a Link 3 again, and then summon back the tuner, and then make a third Link 2. So now we have 2 of the Yukionas in the graveyard, so we can have we both have a way to disrupt our opponent and have follow-up in our second turn. We're going to activate Winter to send the 3 tuner on our side of the field to draw an additional card before we end our turn. Our opponent will activate Harpy's Hunting Ground for some reason. He's going to make his copy of Madame Veer, which negates our synchros, which is okay, we could still play around that. We're going to make a copy of the Link 3, so we can actually negate his Veer before we summon our synchros. He's going to force out the negate, which is fine, which is exactly what we want. We'll use our Winter to actually banish a Link 2 to summon back the Yoko, which gets flipped down, which is fine. At least we'll still get to resolve the effect, which still pops the monster. We're going to tribute summon using the set card just because we can, and then just for a bit of BM, we're going to make a second synchro monster before we go in for Yasha and deal enough for lethal.